Greetings folks, we are doing some more motorcycle maintenance on my KLR here today, Gen 1, and today we're going to be doing a valve shim change. Now, I did one of these somewhat recently. I did it about a month ago before I went on a long road trip, and I didn't film it because it's a slightly more touchy process, you know. It requires some precision and stuff, and I wanted to put full attention to the job when I was doing it the first time. And unfortunately, after I got done with the job, one of the intake valves, when I changed all the shims to what I'd calculated they should be, one of the intake valves was still a little bit too tight. And so it was like just below spec, but it would still run. And so I took it on the road trip, went up to Michigan, came back down to Florida here, and when I got back, I noticed this problem. Thankfully it didn't start when I was on the road. That would have been awful. But when I got back, I noticed a problem where after running the bike for a good while, going on like a longer ride, it would start sputtering after a while. It would have to get really hot, and the bike would start misfiring, like slowly. It would go like boop, and then a little bit further down the road, the misfires would happen more and more frequently, and then all of a sudden it would just shut off. So I thought that was weird. At first I thought it was a leak in my carburetor down there, so I changed the gasket for the carb bowl, and I thought that had fixed it because I started it like an hour or so later and it started up. So I was like, cool, I fixed it. But yeah, I was still having the problem. I would take it out the next couple days and the same problem happened. And if I would shut it off mid-ride, like if I would go out to a restaurant, come back, if it was hot, the bike wouldn't start at all. And so yeah, it was a weird problem. So I was looking around online for different causes, and I saw that one of them was that if your valves are too tight, when the bike gets really hot, the cam will always keep the valve open. Everything will expand, and so the valve will just always be a little bit open, and that can cause your bike to shut down on the road. And when it's too hot, it can cause it to not start because you don't have good enough compression. So just a little explanation of why shim valves, valve shims can be a problem for your bike if they're too tight. So today I've got a large bag of shims that I got off of Rocky Mountain ATV. Shims can be kind of expensive. On Eagle Mike's website, they're about 11 bucks per shim. And then the kit that he sells is about $130. And then on Rocky Mountain, they sell them a little bit cheaper. I think they're about $7. So I got a number of different valves from Rocky Mountain so that I don't have to break this job into two things. If you want to save a little money, first you would check the valves, and then you would do your calculations, see which shim that you need, and then you would order that, and then come back a couple days later whenever the shims came. But yeah, I've got a bag full of shims over there. Hopefully this is going to be a somewhat quick job now that I know kind of what I'm doing, and we can get everything figured out and get my bike back on the road by tonight. That would be awesome. I've been sort of moored here in my apartment building since my bike started having these problems. So yeah, we're gonna get this taken care of. First, we're gonna start taking the tank off, these side fenders, the seat, and that's essentially just gonna be two 8mm bolts, one right here, one behind where this box is for the fender. Seat has two Phillips head screws, and then once you get to the tank, it's two 10mm bolts right up there and two Phillips heads right over there. So we're gonna get all that off, and then we've got a few things to take off right above the engine here so that we can get the valve cover off and out. So let's do all that. Okay, we've got everything removed. Another couple things for the gas tank. You want to remove these two hoses, and it's a good idea to just make sure that your petcock on the side of the tank there is set to off. And yep, remove these hoses, remove this bleeder one up here, and then you can get the tank off. And next, we are going to be taking the fan off. Going to be taking this rubber piece off. And then we'll be disconnecting this spark plug and that wire right over there. And then I also need to take off this spark plug body. I'm not sure what this electric piece is called, but that needs to come off. That's just 10 mil down there, I think. And then finally, we'll also need to take this engine mount off. I think these are 12 mils. And then finally, we'll need to disconnect this hose right here. I'm not sure if it's totally necessary if you don't have the Thermobob upgrade, but last time I did this, I could not get the valve cover off without taking this hose off. And that's going to be a little tricky because coolant is all through this hose. So we'll be loosening this and then quickly removing the hose and tilting it up and trying to like wedge it underneath something so that it's facing up. And then I'll probably stick like a finger of a glove over this piece, because last time I did this, a whole bunch of coolant just rained down all over everything. So probably try to stick a piece of a rubber glove over this, I would think, to catch any coolant. And then I think we'll be good to take these bolts off and get the cover off. So let's do all that. All right, so we got that all taken off. Got this spark plug thing. We got the mounting plate, and then I just covered my coolant hose with the finger of a glove, and then this one took a few fingers. The fingers were a little too large, so there was still some coolant seeping out, and I just put a couple towels here, but this definitely reduces the amount of coolant that is dropping out of here. A little bit did drop out, but there was minimal spillage. So next we're taking off this valve cover. Going to be moving this hose when I do, and you want to keep track of which of these bolts are which, because the two on that side are a different size than this one and that one over there. I think they're 12 mils, I want to say. So we'll be taking that off, and then we will be coming over to this side of the engine and taking these caps off. You can see they're a little dug up. I did try painting them, but obviously not very well. But you'll be taking these caps off, and then you can turn the engine to top dead center through this one right here. So I'll get to that when I get to it. Okay, we got those bolts out. Just a couple notes. I forgot to mention that I did put this on my straight jack, and the reason for that is because when you take out this, for me, when it was tilted down on the kickstand, the oil level was just about to the bottom, so some oil was leaking out. So I think on the straight jack, when I take this out, the oil level should be below this hole. And then when you take out these bolts, these are the ones that came off the valve cover. These two longer ones go to the right side of the engine, and these two shorter ones go to the left side, and you want to make sure that all these rubber gasket things come out with all these bolts. So, yep. Let's see if I can take this off with one hand. Make sure that this rubber gasket comes off with it. No, not quite. I'm gonna finagle this out, and then we will move on to getting this to top dead center. Okay, so we got the valve cover off, and we've got our plugs removed. Thankfully, I was right. The oil level is below this hole when it's straight up and down. And we're gonna take a 19 mil socket to turn this, and we'll be looking for a little line here that has a T next to it. There are a few different kinds of lines. I think there's one with an M, and there's one without anything, so we're looking for the one with the T, and that will mark top dead center. Also, a good thing to note is to only turn this rotor counterclockwise, so only turn it down to the left. If you see that top dead center marking and then go a little past it, don't go backwards, go another full rotation until you get back to top dead center. And there we go, there's our T. I was wrong, the other marking had an F next to it, so make sure that you got that T. And it looks like my cams are facing the wrong direction. That is slightly concerning. The arrows here should be pointing this way. So perhaps I reassembled this all wrong. That's not great. But, yeah, and these lobes should be the total opposite direction. Hold on a sec, I'm gonna look into this. Okay, I was just being an idiot. This is a 4-stroke, so I was just on the wrong stroke. So we're good. We're at top dead center. Our arrows are pointing in the right direction toward the front, and our lobes are each facing out, so we're all good. So now we can take our feeler gauge. I'll go and grab that, and we can measure the clearance underneath each of these lobes. All right, for your intake side, you want the clearance to be between, let's grab our gauge here. You want the clearance to be between 0.2 millimeters and 0.1 millimeter. 0.1 would be on the low end, 0.2 would be on the high, obviously, and that's 0.008 inches and 0.004 inches. And then on your exhaust side here, you want that to be between 0.15 millimeters and 0.25 millimeters. So the clearance is a little larger on the exhaust side. I'm going to take these gauges and see which of them fits under each one of these. Alright, so I was not as out of spec as I was expecting to be. So I am hoping that this is actually the issue that I've been running into and that it's not some deeper problem in the engine. But this right intake valve was right at the bottom of spec at 0.004 inches or 0.1 millimeters. So I'm guessing that this is the issue. This left intake valve was at 0.005 inches, 0.12 millimeters. That's just above spec. The maximum looseness is 0.2 millimeters, so that's pretty close to being almost too tight. And then these exhaust valves were perfect. They were right in the middle of spec, 0.2 millimeters. You can, as I said, you can be between 0.25 and 0.15. So these two are perfect. My intake ones, I'm going to switch to make give a little bit more clearance. I'm gonna calculate what I need, and I'll let you guys know how I do that, and then we'll get to taking the cam caps off, and then that little plate covering the cam chain, and then the cams. We'll get that all off. We'll get these shims out, get them replaced, and then get everything back together. Actually, I just realized that in order to figure out the clearances that I need, I am gonna have to take these cams off so that I can see what size shim I've actually got in there. So to do that, we'll be taking the caps off. Each of them are 10 millimeter, and you'll just take all those out, and then you'll be going down here, and you've got two 8 millimeter bolts holding this plate on, and another, I think that's an 8 mil bolt right there. But as you can see, you have to take these caps off first in order to get to it. So we'll be taking those out, and then we'll be taking our cam chain tensioner off right here. I think this is a 12 mil. You'll loosen this first, and then you'll take these two bolts out, and then I think you'll take this out, and then you can sort of take the whole thing off, and make sure to get another gasket when you do this job. I'll put a link to a good gasket in the description. I got one off 3D Cycle Parts and it's reusable. So I've got a paper one on here right now. We'll take that off and then we'll be able to remove our cam because the chain will be loose. So let's do all of that. Okay, we got those bolts out. Just a note on those are aftermarket bolts. The original ones I think are a bit softer, and Eagle Mike sells harder cam bearing bolts. So those are aftermarket. Now I'm going to pop each one of these caps off, and there are 2 dowels under each one of them. So make sure that you keep track of every one of them, whether they stay in the engine or if they come out with the cap. I also took out my chain tensioner bolts. I haven't popped this off yet because I think I'm going to take this plate off first before I take the tension out. And just be aware when you do take this bolt out here, it's spring loaded. There's a very powerful spring behind it, so it'll pop out at you. So just be careful about that. So let's take these caps off and then we can get to that bolt and those 2 down there. Take the plate off, get the tensioner off, and then we'll be able to see what size shims we've got in there. I'm also going to be getting a zip tie and zip tying this chain around right here so that it doesn't fall down into the engine when I take the cams off. So let's do all that. Okay, we got those all loose. This is able to come up. And just be very careful with this bolt right here. This one is very small. It's actually this one right here. Very small bolt, so get it loose with your ratchet and then take your fingers and just go on this side and loosen it with your fingers so that you do not drop it down there, because that would be awful. You would have to take apart the entire engine after that, so be very careful right there. But we've got these 2 loose right there, so we can just take this on off. Now we will be taking off this chain tensioner, and it's pretty tight on there, so I think I might try to get a flathead screwdriver and pry it right with this little piece right here. Alright, the gasket did not come off super clean, so I'm going to take a gasket scraper. I actually had to pry this off with the gasket scraper. I just put it right in between and then hit it with a rubber mallet a couple times. But I'm going to clean this surface with the gasket cleaner. I'll clean this one off, and then we can put on our new reusable gasket. So let's do that. Got this zip tied up here, and then I think we'll finally be ready to lift up that cam and see what size shims we've got under there. Okay, we are all ready, and I don't even think I'll have to remove the camshaft. I think I could probably just get to the shims like this. So I'm gonna tilt this, and I'm gonna grab a small little flathead screwdriver, and you can just spin these valve seats. See this little indent right there? That's how you'll pry it out. So you can spin that around to the front and then pop that little shim out of there, and we'll see what size it is. And do the same for the other one too. Okay, so we've got our 2 old shims. We've got the right intake and the left intake, 260 and 255. I was just doing some calculating, and these are measured in millimeters. So this is 2.6 millimeters thick, and this one is 2.55. And in order to achieve the middle of spec clearance for each of these. I'll move both of these down 0.05 millimeters. So this one will move down to 255 and this one will move down to 250. I'll put some sort of text thing on screen so that it's easier to do yourself. All right, so we're on the right side of the bike now. Yes, as I was saying, I think, hopefully I didn't confuse you too much with that last shot, but this 255 shim is going in this slot, which was the very tight one, and that should increase the clearance to 0.15 millimeters, which is right in the middle. This 250 shim will go on the left side. That one was the slightly looser one, and that should increase its clearance to 0.17 millimeters, which is somewhat close to the top end. So I'll pop those in. I'll make sure to wipe off the bearing surfaces and the cams with a clean rag, and the shim surfaces down there, I'll wipe those off too, and then everything gets a little dab of oil on it just to make sure that nothing's too dry when it starts back up. Okay, we got our new shims in. Make sure to put the numbers down so that the cam lobes don't wear the numbers off of them. Otherwise, just make sure that you've got your make sure you've got everything written down in like a maintenance book or something like that. It's very useful. So yeah, I'm going to put the cam chain cover back on. I'm going to put those cam caps back on. We'll get the bolts torqued down on those. I'll make sure that these arrows are remaining pointed straight forward, and then we will put that cam chain tensioner back in, get it all screwed in, and I'll show you exactly how to do that. That's a slightly intricate procedure. We'll make sure that we're at top dead center, and then we will take another measurement of our clearances to make sure that everything is still in the right spot. So okay, we got this plate back here back on, and just another note, make sure to put this small 8mm bolt back in before you put the caps on, because as you can see it's blocked. And I heard somewhere that it's good to put thread locker on that bolt. I'm assuming just because it's so small and could easily get down into your engine. So yeah, I put a tiny bit of orange thread locker on there and was just very careful threading it back in not to drop it. And yeah, we've got our inch-pound torque wrench right here. I got mine pretty cheap at Harbor Freight. It's set to 106 inch-pounds, and I'm gonna get all those cam cap bolts tightened down and then torqued, and then we'll put our cam chain tensioner back on, and we'll be ready to make sure that all our measurements are good. All right, I got those cam cap bolts torqued down. Next, we've got our new reusable gasket on our cam chain tensioner. I'm gonna throw it back in here, make sure that it's all ratcheted down. You can just press this button and then push this back in. And what I'm gonna do here is I'm going to place it back this direction. Oh, also, I don't know if I mentioned this earlier, but make sure that you keep your exhaust cap in the right spot. Exhaust, and then your intake one as well. And they've got an arrow that points forward toward the front of the engine. So, all that being said, we're gonna throw this back in with this little nub coming out toward us. And then I'm going to tighten the bolts down on each of these sides, and then I will put that spring-loaded bolt in, and that will extend the ratchet with the spring until it is at the optimal tightness, and then I will screw that bolt in and tighten it down, and then we will be ready to check our clearance. All right, we got this all tightened down. Make sure that washer comes with this bolt as well, and when you push this in, you should hear a couple clicks. That's just the tensioner clicking out. And you want to double check and make sure that your arrows here are lining up. So these are even better than when I started, so that's nice. Got a tight chain. I'm going to double check we're at top dead center. And we're good to measure our shims again. Okay, and that's great. Our new clearances are exactly as we mapped them. This one is just about 0.15 and that one is just about 0.17. So very nice. We're all good. It is time to reassemble, and then I will be taking this on a long ride right around my apartment. Not gonna go more than a mile away, but we're gonna get this engine up to temp and make sure that the problem was fixed. But let's get this reassembled. So we're gonna be putting the cover back on. I think we're gonna be putting a small amount of gasket maker around the valve cover, and then yeah, we'll just be doing everything in reverse order. We'll be what would it be? It would be putting the engine mount back on, getting all the wires and everything that we moved back in between that engine mount plate, and then yeah, pretty much doing everything else. We'll get our coolant hose back in. I'll make sure that my coolant is still at a good level. I'll get my spark plug thing screwed back on, get our fan screwed back on. Yeah, we'll do all that. I'll mention if anything goes awry along the way. Okay, we got the valve cover tightened back down. Each of these bolts gets tightened down to 7.8 Newton meters, I think. I do not have a 12 mil bit that will fit the 1/4 inch drive on my inch-pound torque wrench, and that foot-pound torque wrench, that will not go to 7.8 Newton meters. So I just took my 12 mil wrench and tightened them down a decent amount. 7.8 Newton meters is not very tight, but just enough to get a seal on those gaskets. All right, let's get all our accoutrement back in. Okay, we got everything else back on. We got this fan mounted with the wire connected down there. We got our engine mounting bolts in. I put some orange thread locker on each of these, and they got torqued down to 32 foot-pounds. I got the spark plug connected with that other little plug right down there. Got this spark plug hub thing screwed back in, and I think that's about that. So I'm gonna get my gas tank and everything else back on, and we'll take this on a test ride, and I'll let you know how it goes. Also, real quick, I got my bike mostly back together, but just wanted to mention not to forget to check your coolant level in your radiator and to top it off if you need to. I needed to add just a tiny little bit, but we're good to go. Okay, I just got back from a decently long ride. I went out for about 30-40 minutes and took it pretty fast. Went through some like 25-mile-per-hour roads for a while, went down a 40-mile-per-hour road for a little while, turned it off, turned it back on probably 6 or 7 times, and it was doing fine. There was no hard starts when it was hot like I've been getting for a little while, and yeah, that was awesome. No sputtering after 30 or 40 minutes when the engine really started heating up. So yeah, that's it. That is the repair. If your engine is not starting when it's hot, or if it is breaking down when it's hot, then that's the fix. See you guys in the next one.